Welcome, everybody, to the You Are Worthy Network. Happy Wednesday, happy hump day. Hope everybody is having a tremendous week and you're super encouraged this week. I love this time of the day whenever we have an interview because I feel honored that I get to tell all of you you're worthy. Whatever you've already been through to start your week, whatever you're going through now that's hard, and I do sympathize with that. You're worthy right this second. And you don't suddenly become worthy when all those things you're praying about, all those things you're striving to be. Keep doing those, by the way. It's good. Personal growth and development is awesome. But you don't suddenly become worthy when it all happens for you. You're worthy now, even as you strive to be better. Be encouraged by that. I'm grateful for each and every one of you. You matter, and your story's not done yet. Yesterday's gone. Tomorrow's not promised. So, for those of us that are seeing today, what a gift it is. And you're a gift to all of us. So, be encouraged with that today. I want to introduce you to our wonderful guest today, if my phone would cooperate, which sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. You know how that works. But I want to tell you a little bit about Terri before I introduce you to her. Former Miss USA 1982, Terri Britt is a spiritual coach, intuitive healer, TEDx speaker, author, and the founder of Women Leaders of Love Global Community, as well as the co-owner of Jumpin' Goat Coffee Roasters with her hubby, Charlie Britt, in the Helen and Cleveland, Georgia areas. Terri is the author of The Enlightened Mom, a mother's guide for bringing peace, love, and light to your family's life. Winner of the 2011 Best Spiritual Book of the Year at both New York and San Francisco book festivals, as well as Message Sent, Retrieving the Gift of Love, and is the co-author of the bestseller Women Gone Wild, The Feminine Guide to Fearless Living, Intuition Edition. Terri's been seen and heard on hundreds of radio and television shows and is the former TV news anchor of Movie Time, now known as the E Channel. She is a wife, mom, stepmom, and nana. For 25 years, Terri has coached people from all walks of life, including corporate executives, entrepreneurs, doctors, teachers, coaches, preachers, moms, and dads. Named as one of Life and Style magazine's top 10 impact driven leaders to follow in 2024, Terri's mission is to help women and their families get off the hamster wheel of stress and struggle so they can create lives of peace, balance, joy, abundance, and miracles. Awesome, Terri. Welcome to the You Are Worthy Network.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Man, that title is just right up my alley. That's my whole heart is helping people see their worth.
Yeah, and you are called to do that. I've had a couple of conversations with Terri, and it's not just what she does. She oozes with it. She can't not serve in that way. So it's awesome. Terri, there's so much that we could talk about, and we'll cover a lot of it, hopefully. But what I like to do is always establish who you are a little bit. Of course, we just read a little bit there in the bio, but you're in the Georgia area, obviously. But one of the benefits that I have being blessed with is the network has grown massively. Is there's people that are eventually going to watch this from all over the world. So you are state bound in Georgia. Tell us exactly where you're coming from today.
I'm from the Northeast Georgia mountains. If you can see my view right now, I am looking out at the Blue Ridge Mountains. It's just mountain after mountain after mountain and blue sky. It's absolutely beautiful. We sit on top of this mountain between Helen and Cleveland, and Helen is a Bavarian town, which is a huge tourist community about 90 minutes north of Atlanta. So lots of people come here, and then we have two coffee houses. In our main coffee house, people come in from all over. It's a venue because it sits at the base of this mountain, and it's just this whole experience of music and coffee and wine and artisan food. So yeah, we're right here in the heart of it, of this beautiful, it's God's country. My goodness, it's God's country. If somebody had told me I was going to live in the North Georgia mountains, I would have said, "What? What are you talking about?" But we found ourselves here, my husband Charlie and I did, and we love it.
Yeah, and that it's fascinating to me because it's in the region where I live. I'm guessing you're probably Atlanta's 6 hours from me, so depending on which way I'd go, it might maybe 4.5 5 hours. But I yeah, yeah. I didn't know actually, and I'm pretty good with US geography, but I did not know basically where you're at. Tell me if I'm wrong, is where the Appalachian into the Blue Ridge actually starts. It's kind of
Yeah.
the
Right.
formation of it, right?
It is. And we are very close to the beginning of the Appalachian Trail. So, yes, I mean, we are hiking and waterfalls, and just there's so much to do up here if you're into wine country, all beautiful wineries all through this region. And I mean, you have a little bit of everything. So I know, but I would have never known that, right? I would have never known that this was in North Georgia. And just by the grace of God, we found our way here, and it's I just absolutely love it. And I'm from Arkansas originally, so I was right across the bridge from you.
Right. You're from Cabot, Arkansas, which I'm in Memphis, and Cabot, I'm guessing. Well, let me. How far is Cabot from Little Rock?
About 45 minutes maybe.
Oh yeah, Cabot can't be more than hour and a half max from where I'm at. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't drive it very often, so I don't really know. But yeah, on the bridge, I assume it's the same bridge. I know a lot of it has changed since 1982, but it used to say home of Miss USA and Miss America, or vice versa, Miss America and Miss USA, because Elizabeth Ward was also from Arkansas that year. And so when you'd cross over into Arkansas, there was that sign on the bridge, and I'll never forget seeing that the first.
Ah,
That was way
that's
long time ago.
that's pretty cool. Yeah, no, it's not there anymore, by the way.
I know it's not.
That is cool. That bridge has had a lot of work, but that's a whole nother story. So yeah, tell us a little bit about your husband. So, obviously you're in that season of life where you're doing life, but you're also doing business with your husband. Tell us more about him.
So my hubby is Charlie. We were both widows. I think I'm a widow. He's a widower. Is that the way you say it? I always get that
Yeah,
confused.
yep, that's right.
Um, we've been married 17 years, and my late husband and I, Steve, were married for 17 years. So we had moved from Los Angeles to Destin, Florida, and he dropped dead about a year and a half into our stay there from a heart attack. He had had cancer, beat the cancer, and then had a heart attack. Well, Charlie, my hubby now, he showed up on my doorstep the day after. I told him, I said, "You came sniffing around." He says, "No, I didn't. I came to support you." Because his wife had killed herself 5 years prior. So
Oh,
he was a
goodness.
single dad, and his daughter was between my two girls at that time. So now they're 32, 30, 33, almost 33, 34, and almost 35. So they're boom, 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 boom. But they were on the same dance team, and he knew what it was like to be a single parent all of a sudden. So he just showed up on my doorstep the day after my hubby Steve died and said, "Let me support you through this. I want to support you." Well, next thing I know, I'm hanging out with him and the only other single parent on the dance team. And I'm trying to fix them up. And she's like, "Oh, I want to know Charlie." And he's like, "I'm not interested in Pam." He didn't say I'm interested in you. He was trying to be chivalrous. And we started dating not too long after that. And about a year and a half later, got married. And we have just been on this magical journey. And on our honeymoon, we saw a coffee company up in the mountains of Telluride. He said, "That's my dream." And he had always wanted to move to the mountains, but his late wife wouldn't leave the coast of Florida. So yeah, I said, "Well, I'm game for whatever. I'm a life coach. I can do my work from wherever, whatever." but our goal was to blend the girls and not upset their lives any more than necessary. So we just kind of put it aside. The recession hit, and he went back to medical sales and stuff. He had been selling cookie dough in the big they do in schools for he had the Alabama
Oh
franchise, and his freezer would hold two tractor trailer loads of cookie dough. I mean, that's how much
my
cookie dough he
gosh.
sold. Right. Yeah. And so he had gotten out of that because fundraising went away. But a few years later, around 2011, I guess, his old cookie dough people came back and said, "You've got to get into fundraising again, but you need to do a non-perishable item." And he had already been thinking coffee, and they mentioned coffee. So he started searching it out, and there was a small store up here in Helen, which was the original Jumpin' Goat that a guy had created. And when uh, Charlie started talking to him about fundraising, well, we ended up buying a license to roast with the intention we'd move to Asheville eventually. And then he came back and said, "Will you buy me out?" So we moved to the North Georgia mountains. We'd never been up here. We'd never spent any time here, but we said, "Why not?" So we opened that little store, and then years later, I had him listen to a meditation. Do you want to hear this story? I've shared
Yeah,
it.
sure. Yeah.
So I had him listen to a meditation. So here's the deal with Charlie. Charlie came from an alcoholic background. His dad was the town drunk. His mom worked 24/7. He was kind of a latchkey kid. So his whole thing was about trying to, just take care of his life, take care of his family, his daughter, me, just being that wonderful person. He did not know how to receive. And I didn't know I didn't used to know how to receive either. But I'd been teaching this about worthiness and giving yourself permission to receive abundance. And so he was looking at his life, and I had him listen to a meditation one day. And the meditation was, are you in poverty consciousness? Meaning, are you in survival mode? Are you doing everything you think you should be doing? Or are you in prosperity consciousness? Are you really honoring and loving the way you were created, which to me is putting God first? You're honoring the way you were created. And so I had him listen to this meditation. He comes out of it and he says, "I'm in poverty consciousness." I said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, I want wholesale business because that was a big part of our business." He said, "But I'm sick and tired of being on the road." He said, "I want to be at home with you and the dogs. I'm done." And he was. Here's the key. Because he understands how important it is to honor this 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 feeling inside of you, because that's your soul, that think of it as the Holy Spirit speaking through you, that he had to do it without guilt or shame. He just, because guilt and shame will block you from receiving. So he just said, "I'm done." And he was done. And all of a sudden, wholesale business comes flooding in. It's like the universe and God says, "Oh, you want to experience abundance now? Okay, here it comes." And it comes flooding in. Well, just a few months later, our big property came up for sale, and it used to be a motorcycle church on 7.5 acres overlooking rolling pastures at the base of the mountain we're on. It's called Mount Yona. He comes in, he's giddy. He's giddy. And he says, "I just saw a property. It's my dream." Because in our honeymoon and Telluride, that was his dream. "I want to have a coffee place in the mountains. I want people to come and have an experience." Well, we ended up getting the property, and Jumpin' Goat Coffee Roasters and Tasting Room was born. That was in 2019. And it immediately did well because we already had established ourselves up here. But we kept focusing on how do we go deeper into to loving, the way we were created. How do we go deeper into that? Meaning, how do we, as we open and love ourselves that way, we are now saying, "I am worthy of receiving for being me. I don't have to perform. I don't have to do it like everyone else is doing it." And as he took a stand for that, and we both took a stand for it, we just saw our business keep getting better and better and better. And then finally, out of the blue, one day, an Instagram influencer came through. I think it was in 23, and said, "Hidden gem in the North Georgia mountains." Well, by that weekend, our old church parking lot, you'd think of a big parking lot, was full all the way down to the highway. We couldn't believe it. We're like, "What just happened? What just happened?" So we got to see firsthand that when, instead of doing what you think you should be doing all the time, that you really get connected and you are loving yourself unconditionally, and you are getting all of the emotions out of the way and receiving that guidance about what's right, what are the choices. And you make mistakes, right? But you just learn from them.
Yeah.
We've seen firsthand that the abundance just continues to flood in. And we're so grateful for that, right? And staying in gratitude for it. I mean, it's just been this miraculous thing. So we have this beautiful connection. On our wedding day back in 2008, we committed to being an enlightened couple. And what that means is that you're breaking away illusions. You're not performing. We're so taught in our culture that in a marriage you must deny yourself to serve your partner, to this is putting God first, but it's really not, because if you are not honoring your feelings, if you're not honoring your thoughts, if you're not honoring, your voice, you're actually saying, I'm a mistake. I was created as a mistake. And that's not true, because you are perfect just the way you are. So we committed that we were going to stand in our truths. And also that when we had those moments where we were triggered by the other person, instead of blaming the other person, we saw it as a gift. We saw it as like, okay, Charlie, you're not listening to me. I'm really ticked right now. And then going, thank you for the gift. I know if I'm reacting in any way, there's something inside of me that is being revealed. And so taking that moment that feels like blame and anger and victim mentality and changing it to empowered mentality and going within, talking to that little kid inside of you, saying, what's hurting? What is the belief that is going on inside of you that this is showing you have about yourself? Well, I would, talk to little Terry and say, well, I can't be heard. Nobody hears me. That's a belief she took on as a kid when dad was reading the newspaper, right?
Mm.
It's not the truth. And
Hmm.
so as I started, what we started doing is parenting the little kid inside of each of us. And as we did that, then we weren't looking for the other person to fill us up. We were finding this deep connection here, finding a state of worthiness, feeling more connected to God, to love, and then letting that love overflow to each other. So that was the commitment we made for our marriage. And it has been profound. It has been absolutely profound.
Oh, I could camp so much on this,
Mhm.
but we have so much ground to cover. I love the example you used about dad reading the newspaper, which is just probably a routine he had and how that impacted you. And, you know, we don't get through this life without all of us having things similar to that, some more intense,
Mhm.
but how to overcome
Mhm.
and heal from those things. I've done mindset work the last 2 years, and I'm like a kid in the candy store. I'm like, where's this been all my life? I didn't know this was here.
Mhm.
And it was actually this network was born out of that mindset work, because as I went back and looked at some of the things, and I knew exactly where they were coming from, but I had partaked in the Kool-Aid, the
Mhm.
lies anyway.
Yeah. We
And
all
this word, yeah, I mean, but it's like, and you don't, anyway, you know all this, but you don't do mindset work, heavy mindset work alone for sure.
Mhm.
Um, let's go back in time a little bit.
Mhm.
You know, in high school, Cabot, Arkansas, right? Is it one high school in
It's a big
Cabot?
high school now. I mean, the high school now covers what used to be the elementary school, middle school, and high school. I mean, it is a massive, I think, 5A school now. It's
Oh
huge.
wow. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, yes. So senior year in high school,
Mhm.
2 weeks left.
Mhm.
I love to get into the mindset of 17 and 18-year-olds because, as you know, they're all over the place,
Mhm.
but it gives an insight to what they were thinking and where they were headed. So at that stage in your life, 2 weeks from graduation, you've got the cape and the gown. Maybe you're the one that's in charge of buying the beach ball for the ceremony. Um, you've got maybe the class ring, you've got the date on your calendar. Are you prepared for what's next? Do you have a job at that point? Is that going to be the same job in the summer? Do you have plans to go to a university in the fall? You can't wait to get out of there. The world is Terry's. Or are you on the other end of that spectrum? Well, like, well, this has been secure. This has been fun. I've loved this. I don't want to leave this.
Mhm.
I'm scared of what's next. Or are you somewhere in between?
So my high school years were interesting for me. I would say in middle school, I was like everything, going after everything. In high school, I was still going after every accolade and every achievement. I graduated second in my class. So I was very much out here looking like I had it all together. What I had suppressed in that moment and what was affecting my life, and I didn't realize it, was that I had been molested and I had stuffed it.
Mm,
So I had been molested going into the 10th grade is what I remember now. But I had stuffed it, really, really stuffed it. So I was quite emotionally distraught and feeling a lot of lack on the inside. And not, I mean, there was a part of me that I always knew that I could do whatever I wanted to do. I was smart. I was a go-getter, but on the inside, there was this, I don't know, just this feeling of not enough. And I was attached to my boyfriend. I wanted to get into broadcasting, and my dad used to say, "You can be anything you want to be." And I'd say, "I want to be the next Barbara Walters." But instead of going to the school that I got into that had a great broadcasting department, I was so dysfunctional and in pain that I followed my boyfriend to another college, good school, but it didn't have a broadcasting department. They may now, but they didn't then. And so I was just kind of floundering. I mean, I knew I was going to college on a scholarship, but I I don't know. I was ready to get out of where I had been because high school felt really hard in the sense of because I was so emotional. And also too, I wanted to stand up to some of the mean girls, and my mother would always say, "No, no, no, just let it go, just let it go." And now, we know differently. We know stand up to the bullies, right? We know stand up to the bullies. You don't put up with bullying. And so my spirit was going to take a stand, and my mother was saying, "No, be the good girl." And so that created that dissension, excuse me, inside as well. So it was an interesting time.
wow. Yeah, I can't imagine the pain from that experience. Um,
Didn't surface until my 30s.
mm,
Mhm.
yeah,
Then I remembered it very clearly. I don't remember the exact date. I know where I was. I don't remember the man's name. It was a modeling school. So yeah.
wow.
But anyway, it was, people say, "Oh, you should remember everything." No, you don't, because you're in such shock. What I do remember is that when the man said he needed to do certain things to me to see if I could get into modeling, my intuition said, "No, you don't. This is crazy." But I was so programmed to be a good girl and to acquiesce to the authority that I stood there. And I heard Oprah say one time, she says, "I would have had a lot less abuse if I hadn't been so trained to be a good girl." And because if I would have had a voice and stood up, because my spirit was saying, "Get out of here." But I didn't because I'd been so trained that yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. And and I got molested.
Well, I just interviewed a young lady last week, I believe it was, and she goes into detail, similar experience, different set of circumstances, but she was probably in that, well, she was probably in that 2022 range, I think, when it happened. But and I can't recall it right now, but there's actually a medical term. You hear that term, fight or flight.
Mhm.
There's actually a term that the body at times in a situation like that will shut down, and it's almost like paralyzing effect where you can't fight even if you want to.
That would probably
And
be fawn, fight, flight, or fawn.
Yeah,
probably.
I don't remember, but it's fascinating. And matter of fact, she put a link into the comments of that interview. So it is a fascinating thing for sure. Um, so had you been modeling most of your youth and
Oh no,
what's next?
I felt there was something bigger for me than just, I just felt it. I'd always felt that there was something more than just living at home and or, just doing the typical thing. I just felt it. And so I said, I'd like to try this modeling. And I was going to audition at the modeling school. And I was taken into this man, and he said, well, to be a model, you have to have this in this, and you have to firm breasts and all this stuff. And I need to make sure they're firm enough and all, it was just really perverted. And I couldn't tell you what his name was. I couldn't tell you exactly what he looked like. Because I went in, I think I just disassociated from my body right then and there. But because of that, and I suppressed it and I didn't tell anyone because you feel bad. You feel like, well, I should have left. Why didn't I leave? And now you feel like you're wrong because you didn't get out of there. That I ended up getting very angry and my emotions. Some people hide under the covers. I have two daughters, biological daughters. One, when she's dealing with anger, hides under the covers and deals with it. The other one feels the emotions and gets angry, right? And anger is not a bad thing. I mean, it's higher than, if you look at energy and they've calibrated emotions, shame is the lowest on the a map of consciousness, guilt is the next. They're 20 and 30. And anger is, it climbs up a little bit because it means you're climbing out of the hole, right? You're fighting for yourself. And hopefully, but mine showed up as anger. So if I mean, I could just, take somebody's head off real easily. And I followed my boyfriend to college, and because I wasn't happy, I was doing what I thought I should be doing. I wanted to make sure somebody loved me because I was feeling so unloved on the inside that then when he didn't fill me up, I'd lash out. I put my fist in his kitchen window one day. I mean, that was a mess. So,
Well, you had some unprocessed emotions for sure.
yeah. And back then we didn't talk about molestation. It wasn't a conversation, right? It was
Hmm.
boo. So nowadays, hopefully somebody, hope there's so much conversation around it that you're not the problem. You are not you're not it. It's the person who did this to you. And so it's really important to talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I definitely want to get to how you're helping women now, but I'd be remiss not to at least cover how did you get into the Miss USA pageant? And even I was trying to think, and I should have looked this up. I was trying to think 1982, who was the host? And my first thought was Bob Barker, and then I thought, oh, it could have been Gary Collins. I couldn't remember.
Oh,
So,
Gary Collins was Miss America.
okay,
So
okay.
Bob Barker did Miss USA and Miss Universe for years and years and years. So what happened was I went to college, followed my boyfriend. As I said, I was miserable. Well, in the second semester of my sophomore year of college, I'm at home for the weekend. My boyfriend and I have broken up. So I'm not thinking about what he needs and what's going to get him to love me. I'm just, talking to a friend on the phone about how much I hate school. And he said, so don't go. I said, well, I have to. And he said, says who? And he asked that question, and literally, Steve, it felt like this, that when you're a kid and somebody cracks an egg, pretend they're cracking an egg and they go like this. There was this oozing that washed over my body. And I went, says who? And I knew I had to leave school. So I went into my mom and dad and said, I can't do this anymore. I don't know where I'm going. I'll move home. I'll get a job. I can't do this anymore. And this was so against the grain because I had always worked so hard to prove my worth, I was on the dean's list in college. I mean, I was straight A student most of the time and a B here and there. You know what I'm saying? It was like this went
Yeah.
so against the grain to step off of that hamster wheel. But that that knowingness, and I didn't know what to call it. It was just, I have to leave school. So my parents said, okay. Within the week, I moved home, was able to this was in February, I believe. I'm not sure. January, late January or early February. I was able to rent my room in my apartment because I shared. Somebody moved and got into it, which was right in the middle of the semester is kind of hard. got a job working at Dillard selling shoes, and was like, oh, I feel so free. I mean, everything was flowing, right? It was like, whoo, I can't believe how everything's falling into place. Well, as I'm selling shoes in Dillard's, the girl who had crowned the former Miss Arkansas USA the year before comes in. And I had been in the pageant the year before looking for a break. I made top five and I said, I'll never do this again. So she comes in, she doesn't recognize me because I've now cut my hair off really, really short. And I had lost a little bit of weight because I was not eating college food anymore. So I'm just standing there, and I introduced myself to her. I said I was in it last year. So she goes, "You're going to be in the pageant this year?" And I said, "No, I was just looking for a break. Yeah, I'm thinking, broadcasting, acting, something." And she goes, "Oh, a production company out of Miami just purchased the Miss Arkansas franchise. They make commercials. They do all kinds of production. You might want to enter just to see if you can make some connections." And I went, "Oh, okay." And I told my mom, and she says, "Well, I'll make your dress." Well, I was also training in Hot Springs at a timeshare resort to learn to sell timeshares. So I told them about it, and I said, "Hey, if I, somehow get a plug in for you." Well, I ended up, when I made top 12, putting a plug in for Hamilton Harbor Resort. So I went into Miss Arkansas, won in April. 2 weeks later, was sent to Miss USA. Now, most girls have months to prepare. They have clothing galore. They've been trained. Not all states, but if you really want to compete, they have the training. I had nothing. The only training I had was my mother used to say, swing your hips, you walk like a boy, because I was a jock. And then my sister and I, for fun, would put books on our head and walk around the house, to see if we could stand up straight. I mean, that was the training I had. So, and then my dad gave me a little training. He said, he had just finished Dale Carnegie courses because he was in real estate. And he said, "No, honey," he said, "people love to talk about themselves." He says, "When you go into that one-on-one interview," because back then, I don't know if they still do it this way, but it would be a giant room of all the judges, and you'd have 2 minutes with each judge, and they'd ring a bell, and you'd go to the next one. It's like speed dating, okay? So, and then you'd finish. Well, he says, "Turn it around." Well, I didn't know anything about any of the judges, so I just got the program and started reading about them. Well, I remember getting to Vic Damone, and Vic Damone was old for me then. I didn't really know who he was. And so I looked at him and I said, "This is my one-on-one interview. This is, all the contestants doing this." And I said, "So I hear you're a singer." He says, "Yeah, I am." And I said, "Well, what do you sing?" And he goes, "Oh, you've heard me." And I said, "I don't think so." And he said, "Yeah." He says, "Have you heard those commercials that weekends are made for Michelob?" And I said, "Yeah." Or I said, "I'm not sure," because and I said, "Sing it." So he sang it for me in my interview. And I'm like, "Oh, now I remember." Well, my interviews are what carried me to the top. Literally what carried me to the top, because I just made it fun, had a
Hmm.
nice conversation. So when you get to the top 12, I made it to the top 12, they erased the scores. And that's when Bob Barker said to me, he said, "What do you do in Cabot, Arkansas, population 4,000 on a Saturday night?" And I was very Southern. I said, "Well, Bob, in the winter we stay at home, but in the summer we go downtown to the Tasty Freeze." And I said, "My friends at home are going to shoot me." I think something like that. The guys drink a little, dip a little skull and drink a little beer. Or they sit in the back of my friend's truck, play the banjo, and they drink a little beer and dip a little skull. It's a real good time. Well, the crowd in Biloxi, Mississippi went crazy, right? Because that was speaking their language. So that carried me to the top five. And then in top five, he said, "If you could spread a message to young people, what would it be?" And I said, "To be honest with yourself, because if you have honesty, you have everything." And honesty is what I teach now, is to be honest with who you are, how you were created, be transparent, be fully you. That's being honest. When we're performing, we're not, right? When we're
Right.
trying to
Yeah,
win love and approval, we're not being honest.
that's
We're
right.
we're, we're creating a facade. So anyway, that experience taught me that when you listen to your heart, really pay attention to your intuition, which I didn't know what that was back then, but I did. I left school, and then you stand in your truth. I stood in my truth, talking about drinking beer and dipping skull in the back of a pickup truck. Miracles show up. A miracle showed up when I won. But here's the deal. I couldn't fully receive it because by that point, my boyfriend and I had gotten back together. And in that moment of winning, of course, I'm ecstatic. And then the next moment I'm going in my mind, is this it? Because my whole life had been about trying to achieve things, right? And this was going to fill me up. And here I was, Miss USA, and why didn't I feel fulfilled? And then I look into the audience where my boyfriend sits, and I feel guilty because I know I'm about to be sent to New York and he's going to be left behind in Arkansas. It was so profound that that night in the hotel room with my parents and my boyfriend talking, I actually considered giving back the crown because I didn't want my boyfriend to suffer. I thought that if I let my light shine and if I thrived in this way, that it was going to cause him pain and suffering. I mean, that's how delusional I was. And that's the codependency that I'd been raised in, that, you have to put everybody else's feelings first and deny who you are because this is love. Well, that's not love. That's codependency. That's dysfunction. And I didn't know that then. So luckily they told me keep the crown, but I got right back on that hamster wheel. I mean, and what was really interesting is by the end of that year, I'd won $150,000 in cash and prizes, and half of it was cash. I
A lot of money back then.
It was a lot of money. My dad said, "Give me your cash and I'll invest it." Well, he lost all of it.
Mm,
So I had to sell most of my gifts to be able to pay the gift tax. So I didn't have
mm,
much of anything. I had $10,000 left to my name at the end of the year. And I didn't have to spend a penny because everything is paid for as Miss USA.
right.
So I was kind of back where I started. And I remember moving, I went back home and then I ended up moving to LA. And while I was waiting for my old car to come, because I I I there's another story to this too. I started dating Wayne Newton that year, and he had said, "Don't order your car for your sister, not for you." Well, I ordered it a bright canary yellow, which I wasn't going to drive, so she got to keep the car, but everything else I sold. And I just said, "Well, I'll just keep my car that I had from high school." So a friend was driving it out. But when I got to Los Angeles, I was driving an ugly duckling rent-a-car. So I went from high rises, first class, limousine, back to where I'd started from because I had no permission to receive this kind of abundance. I had no permission to let myself be loved that way. And I didn't understand this until I became a wife and mom. And when what I found is that I was doing what my mom and dad did. I was denying myself, taking care of everyone else at the expense of myself, suppress my feelings and then blow up. And I couldn't stand myself. And I just said, I don't want to do this anymore. And so that's when I committed to healing and committing to loving myself and learning new tools to help myself. And as I did, I started recognizing that I was changing my whole family as I became more peaceful and loving through meditation and looking at the false beliefs I carried. And as I gave myself permission to stand in my truth, I moved from lack to abundance. And I moved from emotional chaos to peace and joy and passion and playfulness. And my whole world changed. My husband and I, my late husband, I got our relationship back. And then our kids. I mean, it changed everything. It changed how I walked in the world. And then I started feeling this calling to teach more people, this. And then eventually, I was guided to write The Enlightened Mom. I was laying on an acupuncture table and I knew I could feel a book bubbling up in me. Well, I will say this, my first book, Message Sent, I was meditating on unconditional love. And as I'm meditating on unconditional love, I see little Terri, the 5-year-old inside of me for the first time ever in my life. And I am sobbing. I'm sobbing because I realize I've never loved her. I've never acknowledged her. I've never taken care of her. I've always put her in a
Mm.
closet and told her she didn't matter. And as I'm recognizing this, I heard very clearly in my ear, get up and write this. This is the beginning of your book. So that was my first book, Message Sent, which was really a journal, right? I mean, it was really a journal. I remember at the end of the year of writing it, I go into Barnes and Noble and I'm like, okay, God, what do you want me to see? And I see an arrow in my head. So I'm walking down the aisle and then it goes this way and I go like this and it's like this. And I'm crawling on Barnes and Noble floor. And I come to a stop. I feel a stop. And I turn and I pull out this book and I'm like, This is from my therapist from like 15 years or 10 years ago. I didn't know she wrote books because she was an intern when I knew her. And I said, what do you want me to see? And I opened it up and it says the pathway to higher consciousness, meaning peace, joy, love, abundance, is the relationship between the inner child and the inner adult. And I had never done any inner child work with her. And in that moment, I'm like, oh, this is what I've been doing. It was just because I was just following the guidance. And so as I continued to do that and just be the what I call the divine mother to little Terry, then as I was laying, some years later, I'm laying on a table and I hear the acupuncture table and I hear the enlightened mom and I went, oh, and I'm like, what's the tagline? And I heard very clearly, you're not in charge of this. So the next day I'm exercising, not thinking about anything. And all of a sudden I hear a mother's guide for bringing peace, love, and light to your family's life. And I went, oh, there's the tagline, you know?
Wow.
And so that's how that came about. And then the way Women Leaders of Love came about is uh, I started recognizing I was at a conference. It was a small mastermind by Marcy Shimoff, who is like the number one all-time best-selling nonfiction author. She put together the Happy for No Reason, Love for No Reason, Chicken Soup for the Mother's Soul, Women's Soul, all those books. And she wrote the foreword to my book for the Enlightened Mom. Well, she was doing this little mastermind, and I thought, well, I want to go take it. So we're talking, and they were talking about how to market your book. And through this process with my late husband, he had watched me shift so much that he said, I don't want to be an achiever anymore. I want to be a seeker. And so he left everything. He was a garment manufacturer, left everything. In a year and a half, he took off and he said, I want to do something bigger than myself. I want to do something for the planet and God. Well, then all of a sudden, some people show up to him and said, we have an idea for a company called conscious1.com. And this is to help bring out these self-help, mindset stuff that you said you've been doing the last 2 years. We were one of the first platforms that ever did it.
Hmm.
And when he died, the company went down. But what was so interesting at this event, when I was with Marcy, they're showing about affiliate marketing and all this stuff. And I turned the page and it's talking about examples of great affiliate marketing. And it said conscious1.com because Conscious One had helped Marcy and Janet Atwood, who was her partner in this, launch a lot of their programs. And in that moment, Steve, it hit me. I did that. When I decided to break the old family paradigm of self-denial, and when I decided to love myself and thrive, my husband watched me. He saw our whole family changed, and he said, I don't want to be an achiever anymore. I want to be a seeker. I want to let everything go. And in that moment, I got so grounded in my purpose of as we thrive, as we honor and love the way we were created, we align. We are putting God first. We're saying, I'm not a mistake. I'm honoring this. And we get out of our emotional chaos and let that divine guidance come through that we can listen to the intuition and then take inspired action, which means from the spirit, right? From the soul. And so when we do this,
Yep.
we move into a magical flow. And so for me, it was like as I finally claimed my crown because I didn't at Miss USA. I finally claimed my crown saying, I matter. I'm going to love myself unconditionally. I started owning my worth, and I call it your worthiness question. I started owning that I was worthy of receiving love, nurturing, and support simply for being me. And that impacted my husband, and it impacted millions of people all over the world. That's the power we have when we own our worth.
When was that you realized that?
That was in probably 2015, about 10 years ago, 11 years ago.
Almost 35 years after winning Miss USA.
Oh, yeah.
So you received a physical crown in 1982, but you received a much more important crown
Yeah.
in 2015.
Yeah.
And that now drives everything you do, right?
Everything I do. I mean, I can remember I was just finished meditating one day. And so when I meditate, I sit and I just really visualize the light of God flooding through my body and washing all my fear, all my pain, everything away, all the way energy field around me. And I just create a connection, right? And so I do a lot of journaling and writing and stuff. And so I finished and I stood up and all of a sudden I hear this poem, and I'll see if I can recite it. It says, "We've been ingrained with the belief that life is a competition and we're all striving to get ahead. But when you realize that we are each distinct and have unique gifts, you discover there is no competition. You don't have to fight and
Mm.
scramble. As you honor and love the way you were created, your gifts are revealed. You align yourself with God and open yourself up to abundance and miracles." And that just came through. It was like that. Yeah, yeah.
That's
And
fire.
that is at the I now have that. I have an ebook called Women Leaders of Love, and it's part of a worthiness quotient free gift that I do for women who are interested. And that is at the front of, the opening page about for us to just get off of the hamster wheel, quit competing. And when we look at women, especially because my both of my husbands like, what is it with women? Women can be so catty with each other. Men just don't care. And what I sense is that we women, we have so suppressed ourselves believing this is love that when we suppress, we're in lack. We're in a state of unworthiness. And so, because it's human nature to want to pull people down, right? Rather than rising up, it's like, well, I'm
Mhm.
going to pull you down so I'll feel better about myself. And that's the lack, that's the cattiness that happens. And so when we love ourselves, that's the last thing we want to do. We want to be surrounded by women who love themselves too. And I remember in this journey of looking one day at my life and going, I don't want to be in this negative energy with these women. And I pulled away. And it was kind of lonely at first, but I said, I want to be around women who take a stand for self-love and who celebrate and support each other and really lift each other up. And then it came into my community, the Women Leaders of Love community, but it also came in my friendships. And what's so wonderful now is to have my daughters being grown and to have empowered conversations with them. And I can even say, because a lot of times as parents, we don't forgive ourselves for maybe mistakes we made. And I can just look at my kids and say, I'm sorry you're struggling with this. I know you got this from me. I'm really, really sorry. You watched me do this when you were younger. So just hand it back to me. You don't have to hold on to this anymore. Just hand it back to me. And it's a light conversation, right? So healing. It's so healing.
Tell folks where they can learn more about you, and also tell us the name of that worthiness. Sorry if I don't say it right, worthiness assessment. And would that be something you're willing to put into the comment section when we have the show
Yeah.
notes up?
Yeah, you can find me at terribritt.com, and
Mhm.
and then there's a quiz I have. Again, this was more or less what I call a divine download, when you're just being open and receptive to receive guidance. And it's called the Worthiness Quotient Quiz. And what it does is it takes you through a series of questions, and there's 8 different areas of your life, like money, relationships, are you open to miracles, that kind of stuff. And it'll help you assess where you are really open, where you've owned your worth. Because what I've seen, Steve, is that a lot of people say, well, I've owned my worth. That's the conscious mind saying this. Your subconscious mind runs 95% of your life. So your subconscious mind might say, well, I can't have that. Like when I was finding myself having a hard time moving forward and I was having struggles with my back, and I put my hands on my lower back one day and I said, Body, what are you trying to tell me? I love you. What are you trying to tell me? And I saw myself as a little 5-year-old in a fetal position, sitting at the root of my spine saying, I can't move. If I move, I might make a mistake and then I get spanked,
Mm,
right?
mm.
And so I had to mother that little girl and say, you're not getting spanked. We don't believe in punishment anymore. We believe in love. And and so it helped me make a big shift. So we may not realize what's going on in our subconscious mind. And that's why when you take the worthiness quotient quiz and you get really honest with your feelings are God's guidepost. And they're going to tell you, okay, what's really going on here? Your mind might be saying you've owned your worth, but what's your subconscious mind saying? So then you get a report, and it's an overall score, and then the 8 different areas and where you need to add some unconditional love into your life, which is a really cool thing because it's fun to love yourself
Awesome.
unconditionally, right? It's not a bad
That's
thing.
awesome.
Yeah.
And this is for guys and gals, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I've had men and women take it. And what's fun about it is when you take it, that if you'll start implementing some of the tools that you get in the report, that people will tell me, well, I went back 6 months later to take it again and my numbers went up. I'm doing better. I'm loving myself more and
that's
I can
awesome.
see it, in a report.
Tangible results. Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. Yeah, please include that
Yeah.
in the comments for sure. Terry, I want to say I'm gonna let you give the viewers one last encouragement thought from you in just a second. But I personally want to thank you for your authenticity and sharing your experiences because I think oftentimes um, we see everybody's highlights.
Mhm.
And you've had a lot of highlights. I mean, winning Miss USA, it's huge, right? And then, you've had a lot of success in your life in other areas that we read about in the bio, but you've been very, very vulnerable about the not so high times. And there's been some real lows too, right? I mean, you've lost a husband, you were molested. I'm sure there's many other things that we didn't have time to get into today, but you've shared that. And we need those stories of vulnerability and we need those stories of overcoming because we're all either going through something or will go through something. And
Mhm.
so I really appreciate your heart to share, your heart to give back and to make a difference. What would be your last words of encouragement for anybody watching out there?
If your beliefs are causing you pain and suffering, they're not the truth. They're not the truth. If you have a belief that says, I'm not enough or it'll never happen to me, it is not the truth. You are a child of God. And in that divinity, you are sacred. You are lovable and you are worthy. We are the ones who block our worthiness. Okay. We are the ones who determine our worth. It's not determined by others. As you love yourself unconditionally and treat yourself as if you matter and that you're worthy of being seen, heard, and valued by being that divine parent to that little kid inside of you, you own your worth. You claim your crown. And then that's when miracles show up.
I love it. I love it. You are a child of God. You are loved. You are worthy.
Mhm.
Wise words, Terry. Terry, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank
It's been
you.
an honor just to get to know you a little better. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Guys, I'm going to say it one more time. Your story's not over yet. I believe in you. Terry believes in you. And I can't wait to see all what God does with the rest of your life. You are worthy. Until next time, guys, God bless. We'll talk soon. Take care.